There are, of course, exceptions, buddies who know all about intimacy and coziness, camaraderie and connection. We see them, these rare constellations of male friendship, and we admire them. But let's be honest and state the darker, more general truth plainly. Friendship is difficult for men. It's a craft for which most of us were never given the tools. For every man who can confidently claim a decent, soul-bearing male friend, there must be at least 8 who, in the quiet, unvarnished honesty of their deep minds, know they have none that truly merit the term. They have acquaintances, colleagues, teammates, and drinking partners. But a friend? A true friend? That is a far rarer commodity. The problem, though it strikes with the piercing loneliness of an individual affliction, is anchored in much larger, heavier societal forces. Men are lonely not through any specific personal deficiency on their part, but because of an inherent, age-old conflict between what our culture requires of being a man on the one hand and what the human heart requires of being a friend on the other. These two ideals, as they are currently defined, are often pulling in opposite directions. The bedrock of true friendship, the very foundation upon which it is built, is mutual vulnerability. It's the shared admission of imperfection. Yet, the traditional bedrock of masculinity is the complete opposite, an unyielding, impenetrable strength. It's like trying to build a warm, inviting home on a sheet of solid, frictionless ice. We may, of course, foster the illusion of friendship. We have our well-rehearsed rituals. We can build a bond by discussing how many goals Manchester United scored in the year of the World Cup, or by debating the intricacies of how hypersonic airplane engines work. We can find common ground analyzing the average return of an S&P 500 stock. These topics are safe. They are external. They are about facts, figures, and performance, things that can be measured and debated without revealing anything of the fragile self within. There can even be a certain intellectual interest, a more sophisticated camaraderie, in thinking together about the classical influence within Picasso's late period, or the abstract idea of justice in Plato's The Laws, or the influence of Plotinus on early Renaissance thought. But these are conversations of the mind, not the soul. They engage our intellect, but leave our core untouched, our deeper loneliness unaddressed. Genuine friendship, the sort that truly nourishes and sustains, the kind that argues against despair and helps us navigate the terrifying, silent eeriness of the early hours that has to begin somewhere else entirely. It begins in the breakdown. It starts the moment the carefully constructed facade cracks, and one person has the courage to say to another, "I'm going out of my mind," or "My marriage is failing and I don't know what to do." It sparks in a life with a confession, "I'm terrified of not being a good father," or a simple, desperate plea, "Help me." It truly starts when one man can look another in the eye and admit, "I'm in love with a colleague and it's tearing me apart," or "I can't get it up anymore, and I feel like less of a man," or "The anxiety never, ever stops, and some days it's hard to breathe." There won't be a friendship that properly counts until we can grant one another the grace to be as weak as we actually are. It cannot flourish until we can confess that we've been liing to ourselves and to everyone else's preserved face, and that the unvarnished truth is far ghastlier and sadder, but also far more tender and more profoundly pathetic than we've yet been able to let on. Regrettably for men, this goes against centuries of conditioning. Since the earliest days, across countless civilizations, it's been self-evident that to be a man involves something else entirely. We are handed our suit of armor in boyhood. We are taught to be unflinching and solid, unperturbed and straightforward, buoyant and resourceful. The cultural mandate is clear: be a rock, be an island. It's about not minding that we've been left or sacked, humiliated or bullied. You take it on the chin, you dust yourself off, and you never let them see you sweat. It's about never losing an erection and knowing how to rule an empire, at least manage a department without taking to bed, pining for mother. It's ultimately about never, ever being that most dreaded and abhorrent of things in the masculine lexicon, a crybaby. So, how do we break the cycle? How do we escape this gilded cage of stoicism? The best way to break the loneliness must be to first admit, with both humor and grace, that it exists. To acknowledge that the armor is heavy and we are, in fact, more than fed up with wearing it. Of course, men often don't know how to be close. Of course, they might be substantially friendless. It should be no surprise at all if a man has lived half a century and never had a truly honest, vulnerable conversation with another member of his gender. Little in his history, from the schoolyard to the boardroom, allows for such an eventuality. We have the vocabulary for competition and victory, but not for confession and vulnerability. If we were tempted to make a small, practical change, what might it look like? Perhaps we could design some packs of conversation cards, a sort of emotional toolkit, and give them out to men to take with them to the traditionally safe male spaces, the bar, the pub, the shooting range, the golf club. On them would be printed a range of questions of a kind that men might secretly long to ask one another, but seldom can, for fear of breaking the unspoken rules. Questions like, when did you last cry and why? What would you want to tell me if you knew for certain that I wouldn't judge you? When do you feel most anxious? What secretly makes you despair? What do you want to be forgiven for? Is the life you are living the one you truly wanted? What is the small, forgotten boy inside you still feel? Most men, upon hearing this, would probably agree that such cards sound naturally idiotic, contrived, and unnecessary. And yet, how quietly revolutionary might they be? How useful, if they provided even a small, structured opportunity for a few men to lower their drawbridge, to let down their guard, and to reveal the more complex, messy, and beautiful reality of who they are. The histories of art and literature are all the proof one might require that men are, and have always been, capable of the greatest empathy, sensitivity, and tenderness. The potential is there. The tragedy is that men are so seldom able to direct these powerful emotions towards one another. The tragedy is that they must spend their lives barricaded inside themselves, in constant, exhausting dread of becoming, in the eyes of their fellow men, something less a child or a woman. The tragedy is that they must waste so much time and be so incredibly brave in defending an illusion of strength that they never asked to be a part of in the first place. But this illusion, powerful as it is, doesn't have to be our final reality. The bravest act a man can perform in the 21st century might not be in a battlefield or in a boardroom, but in a quiet moment with another man, taking a deep breath and saying the three most difficult words, I need help. This is where the real work of connection begins. This is an act of rebellion against an outdated code. It is in these moments of shared, awkward, fumbling truth that the lonely walls of isolation finally begin to crumble, replaced by the sturdy, life-affirming foundation of genuine camaraderie. It is a difficult path, to be sure, one that requires us to unlearn a lifetime of lessons. But it is a journey worth taking for our fathers who never knew how, for our sons so they won't have to suffer the same silence, and for ourselves, right here and now. Let's start that conversation today. If this message resonated with you, and you believe in the power of these conversations to change lives, please consider subscribing to our channel. We are dedicated to exploring the ideas that help us live more meaningful and connected lives. Join our community, and let's continue to learn and grow together. Thank you for watching.